So I will give a short educational case report from Lithuania from vitreoretinal surgeon. Let's start with a 63-year-old female complaining with black cobwebs for 1 week. 2 days ago, she suddenly noticed a loss of vision and flashes in her left eye. She is prescribed with latanoprost eye drops, which she takes for once a day to her both eyes because of open-angle glaucoma. She denies any prior ocular surgery, retinal diseases, diabetes, or usage of anticoagulants, but she has a controlled arterial hypertension. During ophthalmological examination, you can see that her left eye vision is 0.01 with anterior segment biomicroscopy revealing only incipient senile cataract. While examining the right eye fundus shows no vascular or retinal abnormalities, but we cannot visualize the left eye fundus due to dispersed blood in the vitreous. And here comes our first question. What disease do you suspect? Maybe it's a vitritis, or maybe it's a primary intraocular lymphoma, or maybe it's a vitreous hemorrhage. Well, I will give you a clue. It's a vitreous hemorrhage. Then what we should do next? What kind of diagnostic approach should we choose? Maybe an OCT with a blood test, complete blood count and coagulogram, maybe a B-scan with the blood test, and the last option is fundus fluorescein angiography and an ultra-wide field fundus photo. Well, the right answer is B-scan with the blood test because neither OCT nor fundus fluorescein wouldn't be visible due to opaque media. And here we have the picture of the B-scan where we can see vitreous hemorrhage and thickened posterior hyaloid, which is uneven thickness through its length, and it's mobile when asking patient to move his eye, which help us to differentiate between rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. When looking at the blood test, we can see that there were no abnormalities in complete blood count and coagulogram. So what to do next? We can either to choose urgent surgical approach or follow up with repeated B-scans. So I, as a vitreoretinal surgeon, would suggest to take an urgent surgical approach, and soon we'll explain why. So our decision should depend on three major components: the resorption of vitreous hemorrhage, B-scan, and etiology. The resorption of vitreous hemorrhage and its rate depends on etiology, but according to literature, it's about 1% per day. We should be aware if we see a very fast resorption because it might be due to retinal tear. And it should we should all bear in mind that prolonged vitreous hemorrhage can cause complications like hemosiderosis bulbar, retinal damage, glial and fibrovascular proliferation, as well as glaucoma. The B-scan is very good for establishing vitreous hemorrhage, the anatomy of vitreoretinal anatomy with eyes with vitreous hemorrhage, but it is imperfect due to inability to detect multiple tears, high variability in detecting small to moderate retinal tears, as well as being operator dependent. Therefore, if we would base our approach only by a B-scan, we would delay vitrectomy, which is the only treatment for serious forms. And another study made by Ramin Sarafizadeh showed that those eyes who had dense vitreous hemorrhage with posterior hyaloid detachment, for those who had surgery, found that 2/3 of the patient had at least one retinal tear, and 1/3 of the patients had more than one retinal tear, with approximately 40% having retinal detachment, which should encourage us to not be afraid and choose aggressive surgical intervention. Throughout different studies, we see that the same three etiologies form the majority for etiologies, which are retinal vein occlusion, retinal breaks, and AMDs. A cross-sectional study made in our clinic at 2018 revealed that most vitreous hemorrhages were due to retinal tears and a pathogenous retinal detachment. So we all have to agree that if we don't know the etiology, we should evaluate it as a high-risk vitreous hemorrhage. But sometimes conservative management can be acceptable. For example, if we know the probable cause, we know the medical history, or let's say of diabetic retinopathy, or when examining the fellow eye, we find retinal vein occlusion or wet AMD. But if the patient has the diabetes alone, it is not a sufficient explanation for a vitreous hemorrhage. So the final question from us is, what etiology do you suspect? Is it a retinal vein occlusion, wet AMD, or a retinal tear? So let's see a video which would reveal everything. Here you see a vitrectomy and aspirating and cutting the vitreous, revealing us the fundus image. And here in the periphery, we see a small retinal tear with abrupted retinal vessel, which finally caused the vitreous hemorrhage. So our take-home message for you would be, always identify whether vitreous hemorrhage is high risk, and if it is, always take an urgent surgical approach. Don't be afraid. So I want to thank you for friends from Poland, from Lithuania, for a great conference idea and interesting case reports. Thank you and goodbye.